Dann würde ich gerne mit Jayati Ghosh beginnen. Die erste Frage wäre, wenn Sie von Ihrem spezifischen Kontext oder Ihrem spezifischen Arbeitsgebiet, was die Entwicklungsökonomie ist, auf die G7-Politiken schauen. Was sind aus Ihrer Sicht die wichtigsten negativen Effekte auf die Länder des globalen Südens, wenn wir uns die Frage der Ernährungssouveränität und das Klima vor allen Dingen anschauen?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for bringing out the issues so clearly. You know, I have to confess that me, along with many other people in the Global South, we do believe that G7 are the biggest climate criminals in the world today. And they are, I'd like to identify 5 areas in which I think that this criminality is very, very evident. The first is, of course, that in fact G7 countries still remain responsible for something like 60 to 70% of the carbon emissions in the world through their consumption. The reason that people think that it's less is because you have relocated a large amount of the production to developing countries. We destroy our environment, eat up our resources to export goods which are consumed in the north. And the consumption of the north and the investment in the north accounts for something like 70% of global warming in terms of the carbon emissions. So that's the first sense in which that's a major climate criminal. The second is in terms of encouraging the overexploitation of natural resources of nature in the south. And this is done directly. This is done through the trade and investment agreements that we talked about yesterday, through the various systems that ensure that there is a huge incentive for both local producers and foreign producers, both local and foreign companies, to actually exploit as much as they can the available nature without thinking about the consequences in the medium or long term. This has an effect on climate change. It has an effect on the ecology generally, so that we have created extremely degraded and overexploited conditions of nature which are completely unsustainable. The third is that, in fact, G7 policies promote unequal distribution of income and assets. They actively encourage more concentration within the South. And I'm not saying there is no problem within the South, but southern countries also, the activities and the policies of the G7 actively promote further inequalities in asset and income distribution. They encourage displacement of people from their land. They encourage the concentration of wealth in ways that leads to further exploitation of nature in an unsustainable way. The fourth is that when you look at the solutions, so far G7 has promoted only profit-seeking pollutions, cap and trade, various other things which are basically relying on market incentives to encourage private producers to behave a bit better. There is no attempt at regulation, adequate regulation. There is no attempt at ensuring a shift in all kinds of incentives so that consumption patterns change, people's habits change, people's expectations change, material aspirations change in ways that are focused on a quality of life rather than just GDP. And this attempt at looking at climate adaptation and mitigation only through a profit-oriented lens is, I believe, not only ineffective, but actually deeply damaging. And finally, countries that wish to actually engage in efforts to mitigate or to adapt to climate change, developing countries find that we come up against this barrier where the technology transfer is actually prevented. So the concentration of knowledge through intellectual property rights, which is actively promoted by the United States and, I'm sorry to say, Germany, this concentration of knowledge is a deep impediment to countries that really want to make a change in terms of adapting to and mitigating the effects of climate change.